What is going on, everybody? It is episode 13 of the Find Me in Seattle podcast. This thing is cruising now. I feel like I've got a great routine here happening on Friday. It's Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day to all you lovers out there. If you got a significant other, make sure you tell them you love them more than just today. I get that today is important and there's a lot of pressure put on today. Make sure you tell them that more than today. I would say make other Valentine's Days. That's something I've been just popping in my head that more couples should do. I should do that. I should take responsibility for that. But I think doing other Valentine's Day, like in September, could be really good. I don't know why we don't celebrate each other, this one time every single year. But related to Valentine's Day, before I get started in the show, Whole Foods here in Seattle, if you're a Prime member, had 24 roses for $20. That blew my mind. Of course, they were getting my business this year for that because prices go up like crazy. I feel like I've got my eye on flowers year round. I'm trying to constantly, at least regularly bring them home. And to see 24 roses for $20, it really blew my mind. So if you're listening to this and it's still Friday, or maybe even you forgot them and it's Saturday, go get them. I'm sure your significant other will really appreciate that. And happy Valentine's Day to you guys. I'm curious what everyone else does on Valentine's Day, because going out to dinner is such a big deal on this day. And there are some incredible Valentine's Day featured dinners happening today. But I professionally go out and eat at restaurants every single week. And Amanda comes with me on a lot of those. I mean, we went to 2 of them this week. One of them will be my featured meal of the week. And so tonight, we're just staying in. We're going to make spaghetti, some salad, some bread, hang out, just relax. It's kind of like the reversed Valentine's Day, I feel like, for us here, because going out and eating, I hate to say it, doesn't have that special effect. Me cooking and staying home is really the special thing that doesn't happen as often. So I am excited to go and do that. I hope you guys have a wonderful Valentine's Day, or by the time you're listening to this, I hope it was fun for you. So let's jump into this week's show. Before I do, sorry to the guys and girls listening here on audio, but all of you there on YouTube, you can see my shirt. Amanda got this for me. I actually can't, man, this is bad. I don't know his name, but it's from a Goofy movie, and it's where he sprays the spray cheese, and he makes the Leaning Tower of Cheesa, and it was such a great gift. I love the Goofy movie. Powerline is, those songs will be cool for me forever. I always love those songs, and that movie just reminds me of my childhood. So I thought this t-shirt was very silly and a great gift, and I love it. All right, let's jump into this week's news. The first thing that I saw that I wanted to share with you here was a new study from the National Council for Home Safety and Security released on Wednesday, and they named Oak Harbor Washington's safest city. Shout out to you guys, Oak Harbor, for not getting into criminal mischief as much as everybody else. And so the Safest Cities Report is an annual study that examined crime data from the FBI's Uniform Crime Reporting Tool, law enforcement agencies, and internal data from the security sector to provide these statewide rankings. And so it's based off the number of crimes in a city by adding violent crimes and property crimes, and they create this crime rate that's pretty much out of 1,000 person population. Thing to note, non-violent crimes were not part of this study. Only violent crimes. I'm sure I should go into more about what a violent crime is, but let's go into the data that they share here. So Oak Harbor, which is the largest city in Whidbey Island, they have 23,000 residents, and they were the safest city. They had property crime rate below 7 per 1,000 residents. So if that's 7 per, let me step back. The violent crime rate was actually just above 1 per 1,000. So if they got 23,000, there was 23 violent crimes. It's only one every other week, which isn't a lot, which I would think violent crime is abuse and a lot of physical altercations. There's not a lot going on there. And Overall, the study found that only 186 crimes were reported in Oak Harbor in 2019. So if you're looking to get away from Seattle because you're worried about our crime numbers, then maybe Oak Harbor is a place for you to go. Some of the other safest cities was West Richland, Camas, Snoqualmie, and Bainbridge Island. I can imagine Bainbridge Island. Actually, seems like the two islands are good just because the population density is pretty low. Those are small towns, so I think people probably are just less violent towards each other as well. So the city of Seattle, because that's where I live and maybe a lot of you live, ranks 61 out of 73 cities. So maybe that's a good thing for a lot of you who, with the recent crime news that came out, you feel a little bit better about, there's 12 other cities that were ranked more dangerous for crime than here in Seattle. In Seattle, there were a total of 43,298 crimes reported in 2019. That's a lot of crimes. And so don't forget that probably was the highest number based off population density, but this is basing the number out of that per thousand and that metric we talked about earlier. And so the other thing I want to note here is the Emerald City had a property crime rate of 51.49 per thousand. So if my math is right, is that like 2%? And violent crime rate of 6.8 per thousand. So the property crime rate is, 2%. I don't own property, and this is something that terrifies me about owning property, or the things that happen, burglary, theft, breaking in, the danger of kind of having your house out in public. It's one of those things that I don't think about very often. Living on this apartment, I'm not on the bottom story, and so I don't have as many of those situations. The amount of people who've knocked on my door. I had one incident where some weird stranger knocked on my door in the 5 years I lived in this apartment. And so I know you guys all want to know who got last place. Drum roll, please. Last place was Tukwila. They scored last on the list with a property crime rate of 167 per thousand residents. That's more than 1 in 10. That's a little scary. That's a little scary for Tukwila. So if you're in Tukwila, make sure maybe get one of those Ring devices. Lock your doors. I don't have any advice for you. I'm sorry, you guys. That's brutal. But that is the study of Washington's safest cities for 2019. All right, the other thing that happened was last week, even though football ended, football just began and relaunched here in Seattle with the launch of the XFL. I wonder, does XFL still stand for the Extreme Football League? I thought when they launched, it must have been 15 years ago, that's what the X standed for. But they're creating this new competitive football league, which, if you didn't know, there was actually another football league that launched in 2019 called the AAF, and it was a very big failure, huge epic flop, and lost a ton of money. I think a ton of people didn't get paid, and they didn't even last the entire season. I think they were like 3 or 4 weeks in, and they were already having to borrow money to pay the players. So last week the XFL launched, and it was launched on ESPN. So it got a lot of coverage, it got a lot of press, and the numbers came out, and it was really high. There was a lot of viewership for the XFL. So I'm very curious this next week, which is the first Seattle home game, I'm curious if they're going to continue to keep getting that attention, especially right now within the sports world. It's a lot slower. There's not even English Premier League happening right now. They've got 2 weeks off. And so it's a slow time in sports, so it could be a great time for the XFL to capitalize on something like this. And some of the things that make the XFL interesting for some of you who didn't watch is they're giving, in live time, they have the coaches mic'd up, and you hear them calling the plays into the field, which is pretty cool. Also a little dangerous. I don't think in the NFL would ever allow this to happen, but you can see the plays they call and then run them. So I assume the real serious fans are going to really start to understand a lot more of the playbook. There was one story that came out from one of the teams where if it was an odd number, they ran to the left, and if it's an even number, they ran to the right, and they're going to maybe have to switch that up because that gives it away. The thing is, I don't think it's that big of a concern about the play calling in live time because those broadcasts are delayed, even if it's just seconds. By the time it gets played on TV, the play has most likely already run. So I don't think it's that big of a concern, but it could be later on, weeks away or even years where people know the play calls and know the style. That'll be very interesting. But the game this week is here in Seattle at CenturyLink Field. It sounds like, I couldn't get into the Seattle Times article, but they said that demand has been going up. I saw some tickets, they were like $200, that's NFL prices, not XFL prices, because I think you could get starter tickets for like 25 or 30 bucks. And so, yeah, if you got nothing to do this weekend, maybe the XFL might be something that you want to check out. I'm curious what the fan experience is going to be like. Seattle, we come out and we rep our teams really well here in the city. So I'm excited to see who's going to show up. Is the crowd going to be good? We got ranked in last place in our power ranking, so maybe don't expect that we're going to be very good or that we're going to win. But who knows? Maybe things will turn around. It's really unexpected when it comes to the XFL. Oh, the one thing maybe you should know related, because last week we were talking about the Seattle Kraken, the possible name for the NHL team. The Seattle team are the Seattle Dragons. I think their jerseys are kind of cool. Name, not so much. I think Kraken, actually all those NHL teams are way better than the Seattle Dragons. I feel like that was a little bit of a miss. You could have done something, but that's kind of how the XFL goes. All right, you guys are probably sick of me talking about the XFL. All right, so we're moving on to my featured section here of the podcast. So let's start with my meal of the week. My meal of the week comes from Capitol Hill, and it's a restaurant called Corello. Corello, first off, doesn't have a sign. So when you're walking down Broadway, it's on the north end of Broadway, and it's like the very last business there. And there's no sign. So there's actually a place, I think the place next to it's called Lionhead, and I was confused because I saw that sign when we drove by and was like, I thought it was there. Kind of looks like Lionhead's the whole place, but it's not. Corello, the way that you look for it is look on the windows. They've got a bunch of Dozfy art, and if you don't know about Dozfy, Dozfy, go give him a look. He's a local artist. He's awesome. Just has murals all over the city. Got a very unique style, and he's got his art all over the windows. But what made this Italian restaurant so interesting, and I think it was such a clever business and idea, was that they have taken the concept from dim sum restaurants. And if you've never been to dim sum, it's like Chinese brunch, right? Or we call it Asian brunch. And all of the food is put on carts. And I don't think I've ever seen a man deliver it. So it's these ladies push the carts around in the restaurant, and on all the shelves, it's like Harry Potter. Like, do you want any treats off the trolley? And as you say, I want this and I want that, they put it on your table. They mark off your receipt there on the table, and when you're done, you have this checklist of all the things that you ordered, and you go. So what Corello has done is they kind of have a staple of pasta dishes and kind of larger table dishes, and you order those, and they said the for the table section can take like 45 minutes for you to prepare. So in that 45 minutes, instead of just having you sit there and wait for your food, they bring around these carts that have all different offerings when it comes to, let's call them appetizers. And all the appetizers were very surprised. I mean, not really things that I would have known. So they talk about salumi rolls, there's antipasties. They had something that they listed here called Stuzzi Cini, which I'm not really sure what. It was just lots of different things. The dessert cart is also something that rolls by, and it's just like a fun way. You have this little block that you put it face up if you want the cart to come stop by, and then each dish is individually priced from I think 4 to 8 or 9. And if you take one of the plates, they just mark it off on your little sheet, and then when the bill comes, they kind of total all those up. And I just thought it was so fun. Brilliant business decision, right? Because you get someone to order these entrees, maybe you order a $50 entree, and then you get a few of these little plates to snack on while you're waiting. It's just so smart, right? It's a good way for them to load the bill up. It's really fun way for you to have an experience with the person when it comes to deciding and browsing what you like, but you get to see it before you try it, which is really cool. And so the thing that we were there to show off was the slow roasted lamb neck. It's $59. It's got fried eggplant, pepper, honey, habanero, and dates included on it. And it just melted off the bone. I was so shocked. You could see the little vertebrae when we were done. It was just absolutely delicious. I'd highly recommend that you order the lamb neck when you're there. Some of the other things we also got is we got the pappardelle pasta, which is a spicy ragu of tripe and oxtail, and an anchovy crumb, which I thought was just very different, a little spicier than I've had when it comes to other pappardelle pastas. The house-baked bread absolutely blew us away. That was delicious. And maybe our favorite part was as a starter, they had this Parmesan budino. I didn't know what budino was, but it's a cheese. It's hard to explain because it's almost like a cheesecake texture, but it's warm, and it comes like in a little like hockey puck disc, and it comes with red envine, roasted pear, and balsamic, and just the combination of all of them was so delicious, very surprising. Did not think it was going to be that good, and I was a little intimidated to eat it because it looked kind of funky with it being kind of like a cheese puck, but fantastic. Maybe my favorite part, but all of the dishes were really good. I'm sorry, I don't have all of the samplers, but they're always different on those little carts. So I think it's just very fun to take that cart, the cart style of restaurants, pair it with the traditional ordering of the entrees. Very cool, very fun place. You can see them right there in the middle of the restaurant. They are cutting up different pieces of salami, which you could order on the carts as well. And so there's just a different atmosphere of something I've experienced in many other restaurants. And it was a ton of fun. If you're looking for a birthday, anniversary, or a higher end date, Corello, Capitol Hill is your spot. Go check it out. All right. Now, the next part for my biz of the week. Now, last week we talked about Black History Month, right? And I got some really good feedback. I thought that was just something small that I could do to put a reminder out there about some of these businesses. So I've kind of taken that same idea, and with the coronavirus happening in Wuhan, China this last month or two, there's been a huge downfall in people visiting Chinese restaurants. I think all across the country, but let's talk about specifically here in Seattle. And I picked up some to-go food here in Queen Anne at a place called Uptown China, which is kind of like one of our go-to spots. They've got one of the best hot and sour soups in the city. And I read this article simultaneously as I was eating the food and was like, I didn't even put together that people would choose not to go to one of these restaurants because of coronavirus. I think personally that's just kind of silly. I guess I can understand like people's ignorance and not wanting to go there. But I wanted to give out some shout outs to some Chinese restaurants that I think you should go support this week or this month, or when you get a chance, go head into the International District or your local neighborhood Chinese restaurant and go support them. And let's rally behind those communities and those owners, because they don't, it's really discrimination. It's terrible to see how people are being treated that are wearing masks, because they care, and it has no effect on us, and it's just terrible. So here are some of my Chinese restaurants that I have personally eaten at that I love. This is seriously not the entire list, but let's start. So I mentioned Uptown China in Lower Queen Anne. Definitely get the hot and sour soup when you're there. Place that's getting real popular for their dumplings. It's like the competitor to Din Tai Fung. Shout out to Dough Zone. You can find them in Bellevue, in downtown, International District. Xi'an Noodles, which I prefer the University District location versus the Pacific Place location, just because the University location, it serves it on real plates. It's more of a restaurant. The other spot's more of a counter walk up. You get disposable plates. It doesn't feel as much like a restaurant. It feels more like you're eating at a mall. Mike's Noodle House, absolutely fantastic. Harbor City, Cow, get a full roasted duck if you're looking for duck in the International District. How about Hong Kong Bistro? I ate there about 2 weeks ago with some friends. Some dim sum spots is the best kind of moments to some of my favorite Asian food is going to dim sum, because it's just like a fun way to hang out with lots of people and try lots of different food, and it's usually not very expensive. But Topgun out in Bellevue, Jade Garden, I thought I wrote down one more, but I didn't here. Also, there's Tai Tung, Harbor City, just lots of great Chinese restaurants. Make sure if you're going to be in respect to being intentional about where you spend your money and you're thinking about getting Asian food, go support some of these Chinese restaurants all around the city. I think it's just a good thing to do because there's no reason that we shouldn't be supporting these businesses because of a virus that's happening on the other side of the world. That's just silly, impractical, doesn't need to happen. And I hope if you need some suggestions, you can shoot me a message or take one of these spots. Shout out to all those businesses and places that I love and hang out all the time. I think those places are great. That concludes here the episode 13 of the Find Me in Seattle podcast. Thank you very much. Last week was my most listened to show that I've ever done. And so, yeah, I'm going to keep this going. Thanks so much for all your support, for listening, everyone for sharing it on social media. You guys are the fuel to this entire thing. Find Me in Seattle. I appreciate you guys a lot. Hope you have a wonderful weekend, day, morning. Happy Valentine's Day. I love you lots. I'll see you next week.